Can't speak so loud even though I'm trying. Bank Loud Radio, this whole thing. About giving up and giving in, everything beginning. All of it really starts with what I can say right now. People want to be the interactive switch. They want to be the ones to change things, to the point where they'll hurt others if they don't, to change things. Basically that means, if I'm not the one in control, I want to be the one who changes things, even if it means I have to hurt other people, if I have to hurt someone close, to change things if I don't. So, if you're not the positive bringer of change, if you're not the one in a relationship, or if you're not the one doing something to change into a friendship, to change something this way or that way, you'll do it to change things negatively. So, it doesn't matter if things change in a bad way. As long as it changes, you have that interactive switch. You're the one changing it. And I think about that all the time. That I've probably done that. Being Cloud, I've done that. I'm not happy. And I can see that. That's what had happened. More than once, that's what happened. With what happened in my past, I know I did that. I know that there was some thing that was just not adding up. Certain times there was no way to ask a person, though. And I think that's the problem, is that when you notice there's no way to ask a person, and when you know that there's no way to get an answer from a person, that's really it. That it doesn't matter how many times I have a seizure, it doesn't matter how many times I have an EEG pattern that just blasts off the market, that I don't remember a conversation, that it doesn't matter. Because if there's one single moment of letting something just flow, it's not enough. That's what I've noticed. That's what makes the interactive switch so possible. As long as the Matrix exists, the human race will never be free. And when I think about that, that's what it means. As long as there's an opportunity for somebody to grab control, none of us will be free. Because there's always somebody who will grab at that chance, grab at that opportunity. That's why people say, oh, well, I don't want a guy or a girl who will cheat, or I don't want a person who will cheat. This horrible world. You're making it horrible. Because you'll do the same thing. People love pointing out the bad, because they love doing the same thing. That's why it's so easy to point out the bad, because they do the exact same thing. They'll wait for the opportunity to have that interactive switch and to throw you to bits for doing the same thing that they do if they had the opportunity. That's what makes people having the interactive switch, wanting to be the ones to change things, so easy to many people, because they do it to any point. Now, to save a relationship, oh no, they wouldn't do that. But to change things, they'd go to the point of hurting somebody. Even if they didn't change things the way they wanted them, the fact that they were able to change things, it doesn't matter how it changed. It matters that it did. That's what cuts everybody's throat down. That's what cuts everybody's voice down to a vocal nil, nothing. The nihil C, which is the nothing C. If you don't want to have things, if you don't want to find happiness in what happens, how can you find happiness in what can? What will? What, in a lot of ways, has happened. It goes with being bored. It goes with being lazy. I'm not bored when I'm bored. I'm not lazy when I'm lazy. I don't act, even if I don't not act if I'm lazy. I don't not act if I'm bored. Meaning that there's no definite living in a condition of being lazy or bored. You just do things. You just live the life. Whether it's productive or not, you're still going to have to. And I think that's what being an interactive switch to a lot of people means, is that as long as I'm an interactive switch, there's some meaning to my life. But there's meaning to everybody's. There's meaning to your life no matter if you're in control. And I think that's what does it too, is that being an interactive switch to many people, they do it to the point of that to hurt others because they want to have meaning and purpose, but maybe somebody else took away that meaning and purpose, and that they have to finally let go of that revenge to actually make a change in their life. Sometimes the purpose in our lives changes because somebody else doesn't want their purpose. Somebody else wants to rebel, to disobey to what they should have stayed with, but they decided to. They decided to disobey. They decided to disobey and hurt themselves and hurt somebody else and hurt their purpose and hurt the other person's purpose. It didn't hurt much their lives to hurt that purpose, so it didn't mean much. Giving into temptation, it's only one thing. Which means that they gave into a temptation a long time before that. And I think that's what happens, it's just like the old saying, I want to be with someone because I want to be with them, not because they expect me to ask them out, for example. And I think in a lot of ways that's what I've noticed about asking people out. Knowing that I have already. So, more than once. More than a few times. More than once, definitely. And more than a few times have I asked people out where I've heard answers. Or even within talking with somebody, figuring out answers about a relationship beforehand. Where I've heard people say, are you gay or something? Feeling like next to nothing about it, but realizing only toward you, only toward that kind of thought, People say this is a horrible world, but you're making it more horrible by saying it is. You're making it more horrible by acting every single day like it is. I don't know how you could even be happy with your happiness if you're going to call it a horrible world. The misanthropy you're building up in your mind and your character is showing. No one else has made that happen. No past dictator, no current dictator, no current secrecy in our government, no current blood from another government. Nothing else can create that. Only you can. That's what I've noticed, and that's why I think the expectations, especially when you ask people out, relationships are in the same border fence. If all you're living with is the past that has invaded your life and it hurt your life. And I don't think it hasn't. But I wouldn't expect anybody to ask you out if you're just going to live in that past. Because guess what? Not only have you lived in a past, but now you're assembling it in your future and saying that the same thing's going to happen again. Well, why would somebody want to go out with you then? I see nobody having a reason to. Because now you've actually shown why somebody wouldn't ask you out. What would they have a reason to? They wouldn't have any reason to ask you out. You've already shown why you wouldn't take them seriously. I understand not groveling at your feet. I understand that. Because that's what a lot of people would do. Oh, I trust you. No, that's fine. I don't want you to grovel at my feet. I wouldn't want you to anyway. But if you're going to use your relationship in that way, that's not where you're going to stop. Don't worry, I won't try to take control of our relationship. Yeah, you will. You've already started. It's not going to work. And I think it's better that a lot of the things happen the way they did, because what they showed right there is the kind of control they want. There's enough people trying to take control of this world. There's enough people trying to take control of somebody else in this world. There's enough limited family bases in this whole U.S. world, dictatorial or not, that is just doing the same thing. So why would I want to be with you if you're going to do the same thing as them? It's like me saying they're right. They are right in some sense, but they're right in their own minds. I'm not their minds. I'm not your mind. But if your mind plays the same way as theirs, unless I'm into loving myself, getting mistreated, and getting a boot stomped on my head, I can't do it. And I think that's why, like, if you're expecting me to ask you out, it's like, I want to be with someone to be with them. I don't want to just be with their expectations, you know? I don't even need you, pretty much. And I think that's what really counts in a relationship, is that you don't just get with somebody because they expect you to ask them out. Because then all you have is the expectations you're with. You're not with that girl. You're not with that guy. You're with the expectations. You're not with that person. So why would you feel compelled to want to go with somebody if you're just living up to their expectations? It's like, oh, you know, I'm just holding up their expectations. I'm not holding them up. They're not holding me up, obviously, because they want me to live up to their expectations. So I have to do this 100% on my own. Being afraid is what others can put on you of what they feel and say. It's the least likely to change things, but can be the most likely when all the mentality can work in one way or the next. So, like, being afraid is what others can put on you. What they feel and say, as I said right there about expectations, it's the same thing. But it does have harm on what the other person will do, on what you will do too. Because sometimes being afraid and being scared, being in these things, it creates problems too. I've been in that situation before. Now it doesn't really, because right now I don't have any reason to not have my doubts and disbelief. But I'm not being a scientist or a mathematician about it to gain control. I'm just surrendering. Surrendering to how I act, surrendering to what I am, and, you know, surrendering to be this. Be Marcello. Be the pink cloud. This is 100%. There is no difficulty being here. You know, I definitely disagree on many people who've been here and left it. There's nothing else recognizably appealing with any other way of thinking. There isn't. I'm not saying that I'm going to be in this forever, and I doubt that, I am. But I don't doubt that there is something instinctually strong in being yourself. No matter how much judgment and disapproval comes from everybody else. Because that's not going to change things. Their judgment and disapproval won't change your life for the better. It never will. That's the difference that most people don't see when they're in a pink cloud. They don't see that what can happen if you agree with the disapproval and judgment of others is nothing. Nothing can happen then. The rules have changed in this world from the beginning to now. There was no time frame back then. Cavemen survived without policemen. And everyone has an opinion, though. My thoughts on it? Everyone has an opinion. It doesn't mean you should shove it down anybody's throat. It doesn't mean that there should be judgment attached to it. There should be disapproval attached to it. Everyone has an opinion. But I'm not putting that in any position to say sorry. Or to say that you have to say sorry even. Or to say that you have to say something about it. Or, show something about how you feel. It doesn't come from that. What comes from that is how you're feeling now. What you're feeling now. You can have an opinion up the plenther. And many times people judge their own opinion before so they're judging. Why? You know how you judge. It's not going to go away if you judge it. And I think that's what really counts, is that the hysteria of ourselves to have that superiority or inferiority complex, or to feel a certain way or to not feel a certain way, or to express it and not express it. Just everything delivering at once. Everyone has an opinion. That's fine. Once you accept that you do, No one else can run away. You can. That's the only thing that can run away. You can run away. And I think that's why my thoughts on everyone having an opinion, that's fine. But don't struggle to make everybody else think that opinion too. No one else will. You know, even if somebody enjoys or dislikes, they're going to have the different reasons to. And I think that's what really catches people off guard, is that how can you feel that same way? How can you feel the same way as I do, but not feel it for the same reasons? Because they don't. That's it. There's no other line to cross there. They don't feel the same way you do. I apologize for that. But that's not a bad thing. Just because everybody feels the same way or doesn't feel the same way, it doesn't mean you have any recognition or authority to say why, to ask why. You know, people say that why is the most important thing to understand because that's how you gain power over somebody, over anything. But many times you shouldn't ask why. You got to understand it for yourself. You got to understand it and accept it, which is not about control. It's about seeing things for the reality that there isn't. And I think a lot of times people bring up the passive way they think to make somebody else agree with their thinking. But not everybody's passive. Not everybody's aggressive. Not everybody is sensitive the same way you are. And not anybody, well, I mean, when I hear a lot of people talk about emotions, they are very disagreeable to it. Even ones who are emotional or sensitive. They don't like it. Okay? But the fact of the matter is, like, I deal with the most extreme, best and worst emotions. And I wish they could go away. But at the same time, I know they help me step forward each day. So I'm glad that they don't. Because I wouldn't be here today if I didn't have my emotions. I couldn't have survived. No matter how much they hurt, they teach you more than anybody else can. People are killed silently and no one knows. But most people believe in the system and worry about what people think of them. So if all citizens feel that you can't change things, why spend time killing people that all people know can't change things? When I think about this, because a lot of people say like, oh, you can't change the system the way it is. And this goes even broader than just the government and the secret government and whatever is in power, really. The fact of the matter is, if people already have this, such a lackluster view, I just have to say so honestly, where they feel so desensitized or they feel so given up that, oh, you can't change things, oh, I can't change things, you can't change things, blah, 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 on and on and on. If you feel that way, why are you so damn scared of them then? Give up. You don't need to be afraid. And why would they be afraid of the idea? The idea is not going to go away. It started. They started their idea to say that they're right, that to be controlling like the way they are with taxes and everything else is a right thing to do, even though it's only implied powers that actually shouldn't have started it at all. But once you started to change laws with the 16th and 14th Amendments, I believe it's the 16th Amendment, if I'm correct, that you can just add laws and laws and laws against the humans, because all we are humans. But they're humans too. That's the big difference. A lot of people act accordingly as if they're gods. Why would I want to be with somebody in any form? Whether it's a friendship or talking with somebody, why would I want to think in that form of that idea of that person when they're thinking of someone else as a god? That they have omniscient powers. It doesn't make much sense. I can think the way I think. And I know that it's not a broader scale because many people have the inferiority complex where they feel worse than everybody else. I just feel dead. Like at the end of the first Matrix movie. Or I could even say right before the fight with all the Agent Smiths in the second one, where he said it felt like death. It felt like I was dying. And that's the truth. That's where I am. I mean, honestly, I'm probably at the end of the first Matrix where Trinity has to bring him back to life in that sense. And to be honest, and to be very calm in saying it, that honestly, that's what it's going to take now. Too many people have asked if I was gay. Too many people have just said, you know what, Marshall, you got to be stronger than that. Fuck you. I am strong. Are you? You don't seem that strong if you're pointing at me to be stronger. I don't need somebody who's going to defend me like a little baby or something. But for you to hassle me for the character I have, why would you be interested in me? Just curious, That's what I've always wondered when people have rattled that cage. Because I was like, well, then why are you interested in me? There's no reason for you to purposefully say what you said right now and like me at the same time. You have no reason to like me. Especially since you want to change me. But if you can't change things, why spend time killing people that in secret? Or why even spend the time killing people? Back when this country started, a lot of people who disagreed were left alive. I always ask why. I'm just curious because most of the time, especially during a time where it's unilaterally, there is no laws against certain things, and there's a kind of open forum in that sense, that having different ideas is a good thing, but at the same time, they've already killed off almost an entire race, turned into Thanksgiving, and if you had that initial grasp, you've already created the autonomous society. Either you're autonomous, or you're standing in their way. I mean, it sounds like a relationship to me. A bad one. I don't want to be autonomous in a relationship. I actually want to be myself. I mean, if that doesn't turn on a girl, then I can't even turn on anybody. Doesn't matter if I'm bi, liking guys and girls. There's no guy or girl I could turn on by being myself. If I can't turn somebody on with being myself and not just being an autonomous walking robot, then there's nothing else I can do. Then I'll be alone. Because I'm not trying to change you. Not in that form. Different kind of changes, there is an offered substance to it. But for you to say change who you are, your character, let my character live. I'm not living up to a character that you want. I'm going to let my character live. Like you. You let your character live, I let my character live, and we see what happens. If there's failure, there's failure. If there's success, great. There is no combustible element that can destroy that. Only how you think about it can destroy it. How I think about it can destroy it too. The difference between philosophy and criticism. Critical thinking can be deeply unjustified. It can be. I critically think all the time. Pink Cloud is about that. But it can be unjustified. There can be a lot of wrong in what I'm saying. But it's not only about critically thinking. But it can be wrong. Heck, I think I'm wrong all the time. But at the same time, while philosophy can be created from a created form to understand better, I kind of half understand why philosophy a lot of times seems like a very, oh geez, philosophy. You're a philosopher. I was called that from my grandma. You're the philosopher of the family. But it's not about that. It's not about having a philosophy or being a philosopher. But what's better? What other option do I have? Do I have an option? Do I have an option to be something better? Do I have an option to be something different? I don't. I don't have an option. Because all those options are in being what my grandma is, what my brother is, what my mom is, and I don't want to be them. Their decisions came at the cost of their characters. I don't want those decisions. I want something different. Not being a black sheep, not being anything else, but is it better to be an understanding or be critical? Should it be indifferent or should all be paid attention? Is it better? What's better? Is it better to find an understanding with something, or is it better to be critical? Who knows? I don't even know that. But I don't know if being critical is always being critical. Sometimes being critical is just stating the truth, and you could annoy the hell out of somebody by doing that. I can. I've noticed it. I've seen it. And I do know that it doesn't make anybody happy sometimes to hear that truth, to hear what something they're ignoring. Ignorance is bliss to many people. But if you point out the truth to them, they're very upset. Oh, come on, Marcello. I know you're right. But nothing's going to change that. Only you can. If you're happy in that, hey, you're happy in it. There's no one else that can take that away or form up a different view for you. You have that love for it. That means that you have that love for it. No one else probably does love it the way you do. And that's fine. That's fine. That's a fine thing to be, because once you find that place of happiness, even if it's in ignorance, it's yours. No one else wants it, obviously, in the same way you do. Because you found it. And I think with the same thing with being critical, being critical isn't always being critical. Like I said, it's the same thing with understanding, though. Having understanding is a good thing, but at the same time it can be taken advantage of. Like, oh, that guy's weak. He's trying to understand why I'm doing this. Like, let's say, and I'm just making this up here, but let's say a girl is, let's say I'm with a girl and she's cheating. Well, I try to build up an understanding of why, and I say, well, maybe it's me. And then that being naive and having too much strength in apologizing and not doing something without figuring out more answers is an issue too. It's like trying to say that, oh, it's okay as long as I know it's my fault. Which a lot of people do that. They always say someone's cheating, it's okay as long as I know it's my fault. I think that's one of the biggest issues that I've seen a lot of times, where people blame themselves and they're okay with their partner cheating on them. Whether it's guy or girl, girl or girl, guy, guy. Whoever, which side it is, but they are okay with it as long as they know it's their fault. I mean, what else do you need? Just let it go. Let it go. Figure that out later. Sometimes the why is the problem, and you have to get out of that quickly. Sometimes you don't. Sometimes you can be stronger than that and stay in it. Sometimes you could try to build a friendship. If it doesn't work out, the best thing you can do is figure out why. You don't need to explain it to anybody else. You don't need anybody else's approval or disapproval. You just need to know the explanation so that it never happens again. The why, the power a person has over you, is also something you don't need to be around somebody to have. Somebody could have power over you without even ever being around you again in your lifetime. But if you figure out the why, it won't happen. So is it better to be understanding? Should it be indifferent? Or should all be paid attention? It's hard. It's hard to know. Because I think what really can confirm it or create a different understanding of what should be indifferent to or should be paid attention to, it's all going to be based on, person by person basis. Seeing how close somebody is, seeing how far somebody is, even if they're close. You have to look at all those different elements and designs of what people can do, of what people can face. If they're being indifferent to it, it's probably a little difficult for you to not be indifferent to it. If they're paying attention to everything, maybe it's hard for you to pay attention to everything. Maybe they've already stepped over that secret message line and can deliver how they feel or deliver their response to you in a different way than you can, because they've gotten past something that you haven't. Which means that there isn't an understanding there's an understanding that they have that you don't have. Which means that there's no way you could offer the same kind of conversation, communication to them that they can. I know I haven't. I haven't learned to be subtle at all. But it's not because all he wants is sex, so he's going to just go, tap daddy time. No. It's because there is no other offering right now. And in the same way, if there is, I don't see it. And I think that's what makes the rules and understanding, it's all going to be different. And there is a difference. It doesn't make it bad. It doesn't make it good. It just makes it the truth. Math always assembles the quality of flaws and faults and makes them change. Math and science create change by making all the problems labeled as problems. Nothing else does that. Once we've started to create a sort of panic state, there's only one solution, but there's so many damn problems. It's not true. In fact, it's the opposite. There's so many solutions, and there's only one problem. There's only one problem. No matter how much math, algebra, whatever you create, there's only one problem. No matter how much science you look through, no matter how much history you look through, it's all control. That's the problem. And if you just have that one road and everybody agrees to it, everybody tries to leave what they have, which is not control, which is who they are and what they are generally, to what they think about life in general. If math always assembles the quality of flaws and faults, which is what it does, a problem is not something that's fun to look at. But I've gone up to algebra and been okay with it. It's just college algebra and geometry. When you look at those things, what do you have a sense of? Adventure? Maybe. Maybe you do. Maybe what you want is to plot points and get solutions. But is that all? Is that all you want? When I think about that, that's not all I want. There's a lot more that I want. But I don't think it's going to come because of me being myself or, associating or assembling the quality of flaws and, making them change because I have one solution. No, it's not going to do it. Being assertive and being initiative doesn't necessarily mean you're doing something right to somebody. Because a lot of people say you got to be more assertive, you got to initiate things. Well, what if you're doing it to just have somebody control you? Because sometimes people are upset if you don't. Good. I'm glad you're upset that I don't. Because I'm glad you're upset that I'm being myself. It shows something. It shows a huge thing. Especially if you know what kind of person I am. You know that I'm not an assertive or initiative person. If you're trying to make me that way, you've already seen so many damn people that were that way. You're not happy with me not treating you well? Then you'd never be happy with me. I'm glad that I'm not. I'm glad that I don't live up to your expectations because your expectations are so flawed that you don't want to see something good in your life. You're using math and science to create labels of problems, which is just me not treating you badly. It's just control. And it's a bad control. It's not a good one. I don't think it creates a better life for anybody. But I do think a lot of people think it does. That having the math and science and things like that, it creates a better kind of environment for everybody. Even though it doesn't really. People make mistakes in life, and that's true. They like pointing out everyone else's, but they don't like dealing and admitting their own. If somebody makes a mistake in life, they don't really look at it. They don't really say that it's kind of made them better now to make those mistakes. Instead, they like pointing out at everyone else's, but they don't like dealing and admitting their own. But it's not even like talking with somebody else to do that. Because a lot of people say, like, I don't feel like talking to anybody else about it. Okay, well, talk to yourself. That's it. Talk to yourself. Figure it out by yourself. Because it wouldn't matter if you talk to somebody else, because it's not about looking at somebody else. Because a lot of people think that when you speak to somebody else, you're actually accomplishing something. But it's not always about dealing with things with other people. Sometimes it's actually about dealing with things with yourself and finding it by yourself. Because no one else can answer for your future in that way. Even if somebody did, you could go against it. Something that you think about is a lot harder to go against than something else, you know? Which is why a lot of people say, like, I can't really think about it for myself. Because they don't want to. They don't want to spend the time to create a better image of themselves. Because, you know, it's easier to deal with damage. Easier to deal with damage their entire life than it is to deal with fixing that damage. Fixing that damage is a lot more work. It's a lot more hurdles. And, you know, if you're not fulfilled, you have to say it. I was just thinking about that. You have to say it if you're not fulfilled or not. You know, and I only bring this up again because there's a truth about this and even this. In how you deal with yourself. If you're not fulfilled, a lot of times, most of the reasons why people don't say it is because they don't admit things to themselves before they even got into something that they're not fulfilled with or not fulfilled with. So they don't admit something about themselves to themselves, and now they don't admit anything to anyone else. Once you start not admitting to something about yourself to yourself, you wouldn't tell anybody anything else about. You won't admit anything anymore. It's like looking for approval from someone who always disapproves of you, or trying to find the right steps when somebody sees every step that you make as the wrong step. You pretty much are now handling life based on the awareness of somebody who totally disagrees with you every single time. It's not changing. So obviously, you looking for approval or looking at somebody else's judgment as the right kind, when you know that what you want is not what they want. You know it already. Stop fighting. Let them go. Let them live in their misery, their sadness. They're going to stay in it forever. That's not going to change. And I think a lot of people don't accept that. They say, I want to change them. I want to change them. Let me make them happy. Let me see if it works. They're not happy with you. How can you make them happy when they're not happy with you? How can you make them happy? They're not happy with you. That's it. So you have to admit your unfulfillment, your fulfillment. You have to just accept that sometimes, and a lot of times, people point to other people's mistakes because they don't want to accept their own in their lifetime. So they look at everyone else. They vicariously try to live through somebody else, their kids, their uncles, their aunts, their whoever, their grandparents, whatever. Whichever way it goes that way, and it flows pretty heavily. And they don't like admitting their own mistakes, so they point out somebody else's mistakes, even if those aren't mistakes. Even if those aren't mistakes, they say, no, you have to do exactly like as I do. So then I could either have some semblance of character to understand that what I did was not wrong. They want to have some kind of, stamp of approval for themselves. Stamp of approval doesn't just go with somebody else. The family has to get a stamp of approval. No. It actually goes the opposite way too. You have to actually get a stamp of approval for what you've done in your lifetime. If you feel like you've made mistakes, but you don't want to admit them, now you have to get acceptance from somebody else doing the exact same thing. Your child doing the exact same thing. Because you can't accept the mistakes you've made. You made them. Your child didn't make them, and you're fucking throwing them at your kid. So everything that I hear from preachers and everybody else is just an acceptance of that. Fuck you. You have no idea what life is about. It's building your character based on experiences that you did not have. You did not have. Accept that reality. Because your reality is not theirs. No matter how much you try to make it that way, the way you look at a staircase is not the way they will. The way you walk is not the way they're going to walk. And if they do, so what? They're not going to be like you. Accept that. You have to say if you're not fulfilled. You have to say if you're fulfilled. Once you don't, you're crawling down every single path and you don't want to look at yourself anymore. That's why, if you hurt the least of mine, when I heard that, that's one thing that I agree with in the Bible and everything. If you hurt the least of mine, you are the worst. And it's true. You'll be treated as such after you're dead. Because people say karma's a bitch you'll face when you're dead. A lot of times that's true. And that's the fact. There'll be a huge obviousness at the end of your life. The light will be seen, and maybe it's not a light. Maybe it's the fact that you hurt so many damn people, and you tried to hurt the least of the creations of life. Your dissection and destruction of everything is exactly what you get in return when you're dead. When you're alive, too. But maybe what matters isn't the fact that you did those things. What matters is that you're alive and they aren't. Right? Because a lot of people think that way in those terms. The center image of no revenge or bullying, You are the worst, and that's the truth. If you hurt the least of mine. I've seen this in personal life that I've been studying, That I've been seeing every day. When you hurt the least of mine. It's true. When you try to bring out something from somebody or try to take away something from somebody. Why? Because you can? Because you have the ability to? That doesn't mean you care. And it doesn't mean you're doing anything better with it. Just look at the government. Just look at the abusive powers. They don't end. Equal rights is not just about gays, lesbians, all this shit. Everybody has their own individual idea what equal rights are. So when I brought up equal rights is my own. It's not about my sexual orientation, it's about me. Selfishly, yes it is. You're damn right it's selfish. But it's a hint more than what people need in this Cabbage Patch. People don't just need a marriage proposal. That's the thing. If that's all you need, then you'll give up everything else. Go ahead. Give up everything else. Because there's a lot more to you than what your sexual orientation means. Because if you need other people to accept your love, then it's not love. True love is not needed to be accepted. You don't need any acceptance at all. Just do it. Who cares? You have to care, not anybody else. That's not a horrible world. That's what love is. You've accepted the hate in this world by giving in to what other people want. To just have equal rights established in this way. Equal rights are a lot more than that. And will always be more than that. That's the problem. You want to look at it and say it's one thing. I can see the billions of equal rights that are needed for each. And the negativity that spreads because of just having one attitude towards it, it takes away everybody. We're in a prison. You're in a cell because you don't want to see past the ingenuity of what other people horribly do with what they say. You've created it. You're creating a religion just as badly as religions have created an image of you, of your sexual orientation. You're creating a religion of hate. Just hate back. Revenge. The tolerable thing. As long as you do it, you can feel a little freer. Not a lot. You don't want to go with a lot. You want to just go with a little bit. Well, there you go. When people say you don't know what love is, they don't know what love is. You don't know what love is. No, you don't know what love is. And I'm certain you don't, especially if you say that. You don't know what love is, Marcello. I've heard that. And that's why I'm gone. Because I don't need to hear that. If I don't know what love is, all you know is what hate is. All you know is what control is. All you know is what everybody else does. You don't know what I'm doing. I'm loving you. I'm sorry if it's so unknown. I'm sorry if it's so unknown, but I love you. And it's not going away. I do love you. Take care, all. Take care.